there is nothing finer than pulling your own glass of beer from your own tap system. Excuse me. But I had to explain something. Many years ago when I first got into brewing, well, I bottled everything, like I'm sure many of you do. And the bottling went great. My beer tasted great. It was, all of a sudden I realized I was getting to a point in which I wanted to go brew, but I knew once the fermentation was over, I had to bottle. And what that meant, it wasn't the actual physical bottling as much as having to clean them, sanitize them, and do all the things with these bottles. I hated it. So rather than giving up brewing, I decided I was going to go to a tap system. So what do you need for your own tap system? And we'll talk about what I've got. By the way, this segment is brought to you by Grape, Grain, and Bean, which is going to be able to help you with everything that you're going to need for your kegging system. And there's a whole lot of ways to go. If you want just a very basic keg because you're tired of washing bottles, well, you need a 5-gallon keg, right? These Cornelius kegs are wonderful. Holds your full 5-gallon batch, and you will build a system around these. I know I have got a number of them. Now we need something that's going to power our brew out of the kegs, and that's a CO2 bottle. Now you can buy those little bitty CO2 units that clip on. Well, those are going to work fine for you, but let me tell you, you're going to be buying a whole lot of more inserts to put them in to keep it running. I think having a good bottle is really important. Along with our bottle, we've got to have some gauges. This happens to be a double gauge. So in other words, I can have 2 lines coming out of here, and I can set them at different pressures. I can have one bottle that I'm actually carbonating, and the other one that I'm actually using in the brewery. So we've got that. You're going to need a line and a fitting that actually goes into the keg. It's very simple. And finally, you need a tap of some kind. Well, these little plastic picnic taps, these work pretty doggone well. Let's talk regulator. Now, this is the major regulator part. This screw here is what actually adjusts the pressure that comes out. And this is an on-off valve, which allows us to shut off without having to turn the bottle off. What do the gauges do? Well, let me show you. This gauge, you can see the little red in here, this tells you basically how much CO2 you have in your bottle. And when I turn my bottle on, you'll notice how the gauge has come up. Well, the second gauge tells us how much pressure we are actually exerting into our kegs. So, how much gas I've got, how much pressure I'm putting in. You can see that I've got 10 pounds of pressure here that is going to go to my outline. But I can also raise that pressure or lower it by simply adjusting this screw. Simple as that. This is our in connector that goes to our keg. This is what pressurizes it. And it's simply just a click on, click off. This is a ball style. I recommend ball style versus the pin. It just has to do with how it actually makes its connection. I just like this better. It's a very simple system. One other thing I'm going to recommend. Where the hose actually comes down and connects to this unit, I've got a nut here. This can be removed, so this can be changed out. And I don't have to worry about cutting my hose. I like these better than just the barbs. So now we're all hooked up and ready to pour some beer. One of the wonderful things about home brewers is you can take 100 home brewers who have taps and you'll see 100 different ways they're going to do it. So every time you see something that's different, and yours is probably going to be different also. So I'm going to share what I did to make my kegerator. Now my bottles sitting up here in the back is not normally how I have it. They sit down on the floor, but I've got them up here so you can see them. This is my CO2 bottle. This is our nitro unit. Same kind of regulator, but with a little different system of adjustment. This is what we talked about when we nitro our taps. I've got 1 tap on nitro, I got 3 taps on the CO2. For my kegerator, I decided to convert a freezer, which I basically got at Costco. One of the things you have to be careful of, though, is you've got to control the temperature inside the freezer. Obviously, you don't want your beer frozen. So, what you're going to need is a Johnson temperature controller unit. You can get that right from our friends at Grape, Grain, and Bean. And they can set you up with a number of different kinds. There's digital, non-digital. I just went with a simple non-digital unit. You notice inside, I've got a simple unit that measures the temperature, so now the controller, I can set exactly what I want, which is usually about 55 degrees. That controller turns the unit on and off to maintain the temperature. The other thing you'll notice is I have this wood border, and it goes around the entire top. Now, some guys will go ahead and put holes into that and set your taps out of it. Maybe a little tray below. That works fantastic. I didn't want to carve up my unit at all. And I also like the freedom of being able to get to my kegs without running into the taps. Plus, I had to admit, we all know I'm a beer snob. I love my beer towers. Another thing I like to do is I like to number my taps and the corresponding lines as they come in to the cooler. My kegerator holds 4 kegs. That allows me to flow out to my 4 taps on towers. And finally, as my beer starts to drain away, the last thing I want to talk about is I love towers. As you can see, I've got 2 towers here. I just love the feel of pouring a beer from a tower. Yeah, gave me an excuse to get a little more, huh? Well, I made a little countertop, something simple. One day I want to build a really nice bar out here. Something simple that attaches to the kegerator through that wood collar. So I haven't screwed anything or made a problem with the freezer itself. The taps are forward sealing. I'm sorry, I can't say enough about it. Go buy your Perlex. I know that our great sponsor certainly has Perlex. And you will never, ever be upset with the fact that you got really good taps. You will never be sitting there fighting that to get it to loosen up. I don't care how long you haven't poured a beer, it's going to come right on out. Love those forward sealing taps. And finally, of course, our nitro tap. We love the nitro tap. Yeah, and the handles. We're bad frogs here. We have been for years. And with that, this beer's to you. Thank you.